But I know you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, right? This kind of reminds you of another trial that was covered a few years ago that ended in a very surprising manner. Down in Orlando, Florida, you may recall it. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. So I've got some questions for them. Joining us in New York, former senior homicide prosecutor Bernarda Villalona is with us. In Denver, Colorado, criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf. And in Los Angeles, California, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani is back with us. Great to see everyone again. This story it reminds me of that woman down in Orlando, Florida, with a daughter named Kaylee Marie. And I want to ask you this question off the top. Like, what is the defense going to be here? In that case, they pointed the finger at the defendant's father, the child's grandfather. Do you think you're going to see something like that happen in this trial, Bernarda, where they're going to go after a family member?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Vinny, I believe that the body was actually found on the property of a family member. So that does leave an opening for this woman to actually try to point the finger at another family member. What I'm curious to know and to get back is the results of the autopsy. What was the cause of death of this toddler, of this child?
You know, Jeffrey Wolf, I always get suspicious of mothers when their tiny little children go missing and they don't report them missing. It happened down in Orlando, and somehow, some way, 12 people from Pinellas County, Florida said, no big deal. I think it's a big deal. I think it's a real big deal. What do you think, Jeffrey? Is that an issue that you think may resonate with a jury when it's a trial of the mother and she does nothing when the child is missing for 2 months?
Well, you would sure think so, Vinny, and I think that's why she's the one being charged here, because we don't have a lot of information of how they actually tied her to it. They may have some pretty compelling evidence that does that, but I think they have a pretty good way to hang their hat on these crocodile tears that you see for a child that you have missing for 2 months. At 15 months old, that's a large portion of that child's life that the mother is reporting nothing. And it's shocking. It shocks the conscience. I know that if my own children were missing, it would be a matter of seconds, not a matter of months before I got somebody involved. And I think that a jury has a really tough time with that. But I also agree that because they found the body at a family member's house and because they have the car with the mom, there is going to be a bit of a finger pointing going on in this family. And God knows whether they were in cahoots or what was going on.
All right, Nima Rahmani, you're the former federal prosecutor. I trust you. How do we avoid a repeat of what happened down in Orlando in this case? What do prosecutors have to do?
Yeah, Vinny, this isn't Casey Anthony. This is a mother.
You said it. I tried to do the segment without saying it, and he says it. All right, go ahead. That's fine. I'm
not going to jinx this case. This is an entirely separate case. You know, you have a mother here, as you said, didn't report for 2 months. She gave not just one, but two conflicting stories, right? First, she was with dad, right? Evelyn's father, Perry. Then she was with her mom out at some campsite in Virginia. So two different stories. Like, I understand the family here has a significant criminal history, parents, grandparents, but this is a case about mom. She is going to be found guilty. There's a lot of evidence in this case, and frankly, she's hung herself by all the inconsistent statements she's not only given law enforcement, but the local media down there in Tennessee.
Well, here's the problem, Nima and Bernarda, is that, yeah, I saw that happen in Orlando. Remember Zanny the nanny? That's who had Kaylee Marie. Do you remember when police said, well, where do you work? And she said, Universal. And she goes with two police officers over to Universal and she's almost walking into the office and then finally admits that I don't work there. So lies, for some reason, don't mean anything to jurors, Bernarda. Why does someone who lies about everything involving the death of their own child get a benefit of the doubt at the end of the day? All right, wait, let's move on to this case. So how do you avoid that, Bernarda? That's really the question.
Well, Vinny, first off, we're dealing with a different jurisdiction. So that was Florida when we were dealing with all those inconsistencies, and yet that woman was not found guilty. Here we're dealing with Tennessee. We're dealing with a different jury pool, which is completely different than the mindset of people in Florida. So what they will have to do, the prosecution will have to do is, one, make sure that she does not look sympathetic to the jury. Make sure that you label her what she is, which is a killer, a child killer from the very beginning. Make that the narrative. The problem is with Florida is that that woman was such a party girl and there were so many issues that was going on with her that they kept focusing on that as opposed to the actual crime and how she was negligent and not paying any attention to where her daughter was. Here we have from the very beginning, this woman, this child killer, this horrible person who from the very beginning is lying and never ever, with 2 months gone by, reports her child, her blood missing.
That's a great argument. You can tell she's done this, folks. You can tell that she's done this for real and very successfully. All right, Jeffrey Wolf, I want you to listen to today's hearing, because there was a hearing today, and pay close attention to the defendant, Megan Boswell, because she speaks up. And I want everyone to remember, she was 18 when little baby Evelyn died. She's still only 19 years old. Let's take a listen.
All right, Ms. Boswell, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead and tell me whatever you think you need to tell me.
Mr. Sproles and I have resolved any issues I had with his representation, Your Honor.
All right, so you're good to go forward?
Yes, sir.
All right. One of the main objectives of today's hearing was to find out if the state was prepared to file notice to seek enhanced punishment.
We have filed a notice to seek a sentence of imprisonment for life without the possibility of parole. And the aggravating factor is 39-13204I1. The murder was committed against a person less than 12 years of age, and the defendant was 18 years of age or older.
Where are we in the discovery process?
Judge, we had announced at the last hearing that the state has provided us with the discovery responses, and it's considerable. We have been able to work through roughly about half of the information here, but we're still trudging through that.
Do I need to set a motions hearing date or a motions deadline? I kind of feel like Mr. Sproles probably needs to get all the discovery before he can decide what motions need to be filed, and that needs to be done before we just blindly set a trial date.
I agree with that, Judge. I think he needs to see everything before he can evaluate what or if any motions he files.
General, when do you anticipate having the rest of this information to Mr. Sproles?
Well, some of it will be relatively immediately, and some of it will require some forensic analysis. And Ms. Nelson, General Nelson thinks it'll be at least 8 weeks, and I think it might be a little further than that out.
All right, so they'll be back in court in May. But Jeffrey Wolf, in the beginning there, Megan Boswell spoke, and the backstory is there was some back and forth between her and her attorney about trial strategy. And I was just shocked by that, and I don't know if you are, because it's a 19-year-old, and even the way she spoke, she seems to be very much aware and participating and a level of sophistication as a criminal defendant that I wasn't expecting from this 19-year-old.
Well, I'll tell you this, Vinny, and I can speak to this a little bit as the only career defense attorney on this panel. She is doing herself a very good service by being involved in her defense. It's something that I always wish more of my clients would do. I know that a lot of people will say they don't want to fight with their client, they don't want to have their client give them their opinion and things like that. But at the end of the day, this is this young woman's life. That is what is hanging in the balance. No one else's, not her lawyers, not the prosecutors, not the judges. It is her life hanging in the balance. I like it when my clients get involved in that process, and I like that she was able to resolve the issues with her lawyer, because we do see that happen from time to time. And I think it's important to state here, just to respond to what we were saying right before this video, is that we can throw the words child killer around, and we can hoot and we can holler about all of that. This is an 18-year-old kid, okay? And as a defense attorney, it is almost offensive to just lambast her and ask why she gets the benefit of the doubt. She gets it because we're all innocent until proven guilty in this country. That still works, right?
Oh, absolutely. But Bernard was taking us inside the courtroom as to what the arguments are going to be made. And I thank you, Jeffrey, for pointing that out. We're not convicting anyone on this show. We are saying what prosecutors will argue in court, from experienced prosecutors that we have, and that's why we bring in great defense attorneys as well, Jeffrey. But I appreciate that in case anyone misinterpreted what was happening there. We would never convict someone before the evidence is in and we've seen it. But let's talk about something else that was talked about today, which is life without the possibility of parole. It's not a death penalty case, but it's still life without parole for an 18-year-old. Nima Rahmani, would you be comfortable as a prosecutor trying to send an 18-year-old who's now 19 away for the rest of her life?
No question, Vinny. If she's convicted of murdering a 1-year-old baby, she should spend the rest of her life in prison. And in fact, prosecutors shouldn't have taken the death penalty off the table. That's significant leverage in this case because now you've boxed yourself in as a prosecutor. You can't offer a deal in this type of case because it's a life case. But had you had that potential death sentence, you could have potentially bargained down and had her plead to life without the possibility of parole. Now you can't, and now as a prosecutor, you have no leverage, you have no hammer, and you're stuck trying this case.
All right, and we will be covering it, folks. We'll stay on top of this one. Again, in May, they'll be back in court. We'll have more updates then.